When those that always hunger, also known as the All-Consuming, arrived in the Milky Way galaxy, the warrior species of the galaxy built the first and last line of defense. All predator races were drafted, all to buy a bit more time for the galaxy's scientists and industrialists to come up with something, anything to stop the hordes. These days, 100,000 souls were sacrificed per day, simply to make the most of stalling on a forsaken planet. And most of these corpses thrown at the enemy were of human origin, due to the humans being the most numerous warrior species, as well as the lowest in power. As they lacked any natural armor, quick healing factors, extreme physical strength and/or endurance, just about anything that made them stand out, besides their quick maturation rate in comparison with other warrior species. Totally unlike the true apex predators of the galaxy, the Coriel, which were towering brutes with natural night vision, extraordinary hearing, the ability to quickly regrow limbs and sustain constant high physical strain for months, also while not eating a single morsel of food nor water, and lastly, them being unable to feel fear. Their only drawback was their maturation rate of 800 to 1,000 years, in which they were small and weak, but stunningly fast, but with very limited cognitive abilities. This made them roadblocks for even the mightiest of beasts, that the all-consuming centered the foot soldiers of the galaxy. One having single-handedly held an important bridge leading to a planetary shield generator for one entire month before, in his death, setting off explosives to stop the hungering hordes from reaching the generator. Buhlor's POV. I have been deployed on the highly industrial planet of Tequo, the current center of the war of survival against the hungry beasts from another galaxy. Having personally slaughtered tens of thousands, and commanded the other warriors of the galaxy, be they the undying Rero, the lightning-fast Gula, or the thousand-eyed Musa, and lastly humans. I didn't think highly in any way of the humans. They were weaklings, and even with their strength in numbers, they were still pathetic, but they were everywhere, simply because there was no other option to man or positions. Still, they were too easy to break, to run for their lives and to seize up in fear. Their grotesque fear. Which warrior species would have a need for fear? The survival of the group should always be put over the individual, and those that didn't abide by that were traitors to said survival. But the humans were simply too valuable, due to their numbers, to eradicate in the current conflict. Maybe after it was over, my People's Council would finally give the order to conquer the human weaklings. But alas, hold the underground tunnels clear of the endless consumers. That was my current objective, and hold them clear I would. Just as I would rip and tear, burn and melt any monster that I found. These thoughts and more burned from my mind as I made my way through the massive enemies I faced on the cavernous world of Tequo. Slashing through their bodies like paper with my claws, and peppering their bodies with my plasma revolver until every beast fell. I kept clearing the corridors and rooms of foul beasts until no more came my way, but I was always on the hunt for more. Using my keen hearing, I detected it. The sound of claws scraping against the ground, their screams, their death, but still the sounds of them advancing didn't cease. Quickly making my way over to the sounds of battle, I was greeted with the drumming sound of human weaponry. It led me to an almost lightless expansive circular room made up of heavy stone blocks, with the only light being provided by the dim shine of a seemingly broken red glow stick, but my vision was still clear as day. I saw it. A single human warrior in the middle of the room with one of their, if I remember correctly, light machine guns. I decided to watch the human struggle, which surely would not last long, as soon the human would just run like so many of his comrades had. The human's weapon was pointed towards a long corridor, littered with the decaying bodies of the foul monsters, but more kept coming. But this time, slowly and as silently as possible, it seemed. The human reacted slowly, just a few blinks before the beast had closed in on him, firing wildly into the dark corridor. The shots abruptly rang out in the cavernous halls, together with the sounds of screams from the all-consuming. But just as quick as it started, it ended. the break being attributed to two things. The first having been a clicking screech as the human's gun jammed, and the second being his scream, as the razor-sharp tail of the last all-consuming stew alive slashing his left thigh and arm. The human sharply recoiled with a grunt of agony, dropping his gun, but wasn't immediately slaughtered, as the last shots of his weapon had torn into the hide of his enemy, stunning it for the moment. The human had fallen onto his knees, clutching his wounded arm with his still intact one, with laboured breathing. Now I was sure his fear and cowardice would set in, and he would run for his puny life, but what happened next surprised me. Instead of running for his life, the human steeled himself, pulling a knife out of his sheath with his right arm, and slowly, wobbly, taking a stand with the all-consuming opposite of him, somewhat mimicking his movements. His voice then filled the dimly lit room. "I know the other races treat us as expendable, as weaklings, because we are weak and afraid. But I have made a promise to myself. If my life was already forsaken, I'd rather spend it completing my mission than waste it running in fear. Because what I fear a million times more than death or you is letting my family and my friends be consumed by you monsters. To have my home world fall to you, and by extension this tunnel system." As the human's monologue came to a close, both parties of the fight readied themselves for their last clash. I decided to step in, because this human had shown something the other warriors of humanity had not displayed until now. The soul of a warrior and what their fear truly meant. It was not a sign of cowardice or of weakness, but instead a tool. One to make them fight harder and harder to their dying breath. As only when you are capable of feeling the fear of loss will you do everything to oppose it. The beast and human rushed each other, just as I had comprehended the human's words. Aiming with trained efficiency, my plasma revolver took out the wounded beast in a single shot. The human, after what felt like an eternity, turned to me as I stepped into the light of the glow stick. All I had to say to him was, "Take up your weapon. There are more where those came from."